Hello, I'm Beth Musumeci, Global Cybersecurity Practice Lead for AlixPartners, and I'll be the moderator for today's panel discussion. I'm truly honored to be joined here by some very incredible cybersecurity industry leaders who I've had the absolute pleasure to get to know and very much respect. And I so look forward to you getting to know them better through today's discussion. So let me introduce them in the order in which they appear on the screen here. Megha Kulsi. Megha is a partner in AlixPartners Cybersecurity practice, known for her expertise in AI cybersecurity, as well as cybersecurity strategy and emerging tech. She is a sought-after speaker at industry conferences and enjoys sharing her insights with global audiences. Christina Richmond. Christina is a veteran industry analyst covering cybersecurity for nearly 2 decades. She is a researcher by trade. She finds pleasure in investigating connections and trends, both personally and professionally. Dimple Ahluwalia. Dimple is a senior partner in IBM Consulting Cybersecurity Services. She leads a team responsible for building and delivering cybersecurity services to clients globally. Dimple is also Global Business Information Security Officer for IBM Consulting. Tanya Lancaster. Tanya is a director with Level Blue, formerly AT&T Cybersecurity, which is among the largest providers of cybersecurity services globally. She's been in cyber serving clients for more than 15 years. So a special thank you to the panelists for joining us today. And thank you, audience. Today's discussion will focus on the use of artificial intelligence, machine learning, AI/ML, in our cybersecurity defenses, especially given the potential use by bad actors on offense, a bit of an arms race. So we hope to cover the balance of AI in that cyber arms race, the return on investment for AI in cybersecurity, and trustworthiness and regulatory implications. So we have a lot to cover. So a little bit about the format. The format of today's session is designed to be engaging and fun. It's unrehearsed, so it will be quite spontaneous. So thank you to the panelists for your being courageous and good sports. We'll have a lightning question, which will be multiple choice. That'll get us started. This will give us some interesting insights into our panelists' views. The panelists each are armed with a paddle and a marker, and they'll share their written answers for each lightning question. This will inevitably lead to some discussion and follow-up questions to dive deeper. And we'll repeat this as time permits. And before we close, we'll get to some audience questions. So very important, audience, please add your questions into the chat throughout, and we'll draw from those. Okay. So shall we get started? Panelists, are you ready?
Ready.
All right. All right. This will be fun. So lightning round question 1. It'll be multiple choice. Is using AI for cybersecurity measures A, necessary to stay ahead, B, too dangerous to pursue, or C, acceptable with strict guidelines? So panelists, please take just a moment to answer and then share your answer with the audience, please.
Oh, I think I need a darker marker.
I think I see a C. Oh, A and C. Wow, A and C. And then I have an AC. So gotcha. So everybody seems to see that it's necessary. But I'd love to dive into these a little bit further. So let's start with, let's see, who we had. A and C was Christina and Tanya. So, so how do you view the role of AI/ML in cybersecurity? Are these techniques that are enhancing?
When you learn how to take tests, right, you read the question really carefully. And so there wasn't the word today in the question. But so I think in future, AI is very necessary for cybersecurity. But today, right, I think it's only acceptable with some really tight guardrails. What do you think, Tanya?
Yes, I think the risks that AI is introducing, not just in terms of data, but also in terms of the infrastructure that is being used, the even the algorithms that are being trained. If you think about things like the potential for prompt injection, in which a hacker can actually inject certain responses that are malicious to maneuver the models. There are a lot of risk that can be introduced. And so I think that has to be looked at very, very closely as organizations move forward. And they are moving forward very quickly, but definitely those risks have to be examined. For me, I also think about the fact that, look, we've been using AI for more than a decade in the form of machine learning. We are using it, have been using it for 10 years to curate threat intelligence within our own security operations and threat intelligence teams, identifying malware variation, identifying threat actor infrastructure. And so it's here. I mean, and it is absolutely necessary to keep up with the pace of our adversaries who are using it on their end.
But, you know, we're going to get to this too, but we don't have the frameworks, the policies, the governance, the regulatory controls yet. And there's another question that we might get to if we have time. And it's like, how far will you let AI go in the cybersecurity realm? So, yeah, I had to split my answer. I kept debating on that one. But it's a great question.
So Dimple and Mega, you were sort of united on your answers. Anything to add? Any thoughts to share?
Yeah, Mega, do you wanna start?
Yeah, sure. I can start. Yeah, definitely acceptable with stricter guidelines. I'm definitely for emerging technology. I love emerging technology, which is great. However, if there's more governance and oversight and some sort of compliance really around these models is just so essential to make sure that whatever these models are going to ingest, that there's no biases or limited biases or whatever coming out of the models. And I do agree with Tanya. I mean, we have been using AI ML models in cybersecurity solutions for a decade. I mean, and now actually the big difference actually is, before we were using more structured data in those models. Now we're actually going to be able to use more unstructured data in those models, which will make anomaly detection just so much easier and better and really reduce those false positives. So I think I'm all for it, but definitely with some guardrails.
I think I would not disagree with that, right? I think when interpreting the question, like Christina, I had to ponder for a second because I'm always thinking about what is coming. So it's not a matter of how we tackle with it today. Certainly, there are some considerations where not all organizations have the ability to apply AI for security in the same manner. There are some who have a little bit better support and are a little ahead of the game, depending on, as Tanya mentioned. This is something that ML and AI have been in practice for well over a decade. But I think some of us take that for granted based on where we work, not necessarily looking at whether that's been an option for all. And so I think depending on the stages where we are, our experiences definitely reflect our answers. So when I was thinking about it, is it a necessity to use it? Yes. Does it come with a whole lot of caveats around being responsible in how you apply it, having a well-defined governing model where there are the right level of participation that happens from functions, whether it's privacy, whether it's ethics, whether it's integrity, right? Different organizations, different areas, but really to look at those use cases and making sure that not only is there a well-defined structure and guidance that's being provided around use of it, but I think that can be said about just use of general use of AI, not specific to security. So that's why I kind of went with A, is that for us, from a cyber standpoint, we know that organizations, to remain competitive, they are going to have to adopt AI. Otherwise, investors, stakeholders are going to react. And so for me, it was more of if we're going to continue to be enablers of business, I don't see a choice but for us to adopt AI for cyber purposes, right? We see the pace of the threats and the volume of them increase. We see ransomware attacks like it used to take, 2 months. Now it's in 3 days based on use of AI. So for that very reason, it wasn't just that, yes, it's acceptable. And with guidelines, to me, that's a given. But it is a necessity.
Great answers, ladies, and actually a great segue into lightning round question number 2. So are you ready for the second lightning round? Be very interested to see your answers given the first one here. So lightning round 2. Would you trust AI to handle sensitive real-time threat responses without human intervention? A, yes, 100%. B, only if AI is carefully supervised. Or C, no, it's too risky. So please, once again, take a moment and then share your responses.
Is that a backwards C? I feel like my letters are backwards.
No, they're fine.
I'm looking at it from this screen.
Wow, Tanya, yours is really like definite.
She's
None of this waffling stuff that I'm doing. I love it. Why?
All right,
Why?
Tanya, you gotta explain those asterisks. Go ahead.
And I'm thinking about where we are today, not necessarily where we may be in 3 to 5 years. But I think about AI in the same way that we've had the discussion around SOAR technologies for the last 15 years. I don't know if any of you guys remember when SOAR first came out. It was all about we're going to automate everything, and we're going to take the human decision-making out of it, and we're going to be remediating threats, and we're going to be remediating vulnerabilities, and it's all going to be automated. And still, 15 years later, we're not at that point. And from our experience with our customers, it really is about the comfort level of the customer in terms of us taking automated actions within the SOC or within our NOC. Most of them don't want us to, especially when it comes to things like vulnerability mitigation or vulnerability patching. They want us to be having conversations with them. Will we get to a point where we can be doing that using AI? I think in theory we can. My question is the organization and are the leaders going to be comfortable enough to accept that risk that and accept that the model can do it in a way that's not going to break the business, is not going to shut down a critical application or do something else. So I think we're still a ways off from that. A long ways.
Thank you for that. Christina, you had your split answer there.
Yeah. I didn't interrupt, but I wanted to jump on the train.
Go ahead, jump on that.
Yeah, I agree with you. When are the enterprises going to be willing to automate things like response, for sure? And that's what we've seen with SOAR and with MDR. But I also think there's some technical reasons why AI can't yet be trusted, right? There's hallucinations. It can be manipulated. It depends on the data that's been trained on. It can miss anomalous behavior. It can provide false negatives and false positives.
Yep.
Right. So I would say it's risky today with the way I read the sentence, the question. It's the sensitive real time, the highly sensitive real time threat data. But I also would say, in answer to your statement about enterprises, when they're going to be willing, what I'm seeing is some startups are curating some of the data that they're using for AI, of course. They're also backstopping that AI, whatever, alert, triage, investigation, whatever that information is that AI is helping with, so that they are vetting it. And so that's why I went with the split answers, because I think it's very useful with human interaction. And we're there anyway. To Mega's point, to Dimple's point earlier, and also Tanya, we're there today. We're using it today. But yeah, it's scary when it's highly sensitive and real time.
Did I hear the question wrong? I thought C was yes with humans. Anyway, I agree with that totally.
That's okay. C was too risky, but it sounds like you're
without human intervention. So
right.
Okay.
All right. So just talking a little bit about, your answers there. Dimple, Mega, anything you'd like to add? Because really I heard a little bit about what you think this might look like. as we proceed ahead, but I'd love to get some thoughts on that.
Yeah,
Go
so
ahead.
I'll tell you that when I listened to the use of the word AI, I took a little liberty of changing the acronym. So instead of saying artificial intelligence, we've been talking a lot internally and with our clients about augmented intelligence. And I think that's how I kind of look at it, is that couple of different things. Look, for us, there is certainly an ability to be able to, there's a level of intelligence that humans bring in context and everything else, that while AI continues to make advancements, it really is a augmentation that enables the analysts, if we're talking about more from a threat management perspective, it gives them the ability to focus a little bit more by reducing noise. And so the real-time aspects of it, and we've seen this over a period of time that we've been applying it as well, is just looking at automating what is feasible. And so that includes some mundane tasks or repetitive tasks, certainly. And I think we've experienced, at least from our own organization, is about 40% of an analyst's time is spent on tasks that can be automated. So by doing that, so when I think about real time, if at that moment you have the ability to look at less information, have AI helping in real time by summarizing and providing information around those alerts in human readable formats, and summaries of those, and then being able to support the response side by learning and creating active responses that help, that get better over time, albeit, but with the ability to find similar incidents, look at information around update on affected systems, patch vulnerable code. Yes, I agree. It's early days. I'm not saying that everybody goes and depends on it, but I think there's been enough progress over the past year or so to demonstrate where there are more credible use cases that will enable us to apply augmented intelligence in real time for combating the threats.
Great, thank you. Mega?
On that question around trusting AI without, human intervention, I think we have a little ways to go to trust AI. A lot of, polling surveys and so on out there that still, state that people don't trust AI completely for a lot of different reasons, right? Part of trusting AI is understanding transparency of model development. It's also having ethical AI principles built in to your model development. It has to do with accountability and responsibility of those AI models that you're creating. And in regards to threat response, specifically without human intervention, I mean, that it's going to take a little bit for us as humans to get there to trust. And that's going to require that governance. It's going to require us to, say that, okay, this model was created in X way. Here's exactly what the model is doing. Here's exactly so that transparency for us to get comfortable. And that's why I had chosen AI is, use it for threat response without human intervention eventually, but it has to be carefully supervised. Those models have to make sure they're not underfitted or overfitted or so on. So lot to happen before we can get there for full trust.
Great answers. Great discussion on that. So similarly, I think you shared a little bit about your insights and your view into this next question, but let's just tackle it from a different lens. So if you're going to look at trustworthiness, which we talked a little bit about in this last one, but also from a regulatory perspective, do you trust that today the AI ML models for cybersecurity, do you trust them for regulatory and trustworthiness in general? So let's get to your paddles again here. And A is yes and B is no. So yes, absolutely. No, not fully. love to just get a
Read that question and say that question again.
Sure.
Sorry.
Absolutely. So you touched a little bit, each of you, in your voiceover about AI ML models for cybersecurity. But do you trust them? Like if you put the lens on from trustworthiness and regulatory, do you trust AI ML models for cybersecurity today, the ones we're using today in cybersecurity?
I say no.
We get a no. We have a B, no. No. And Meg, I didn't see yours. Sorry. All right, we are unanimous. So I think we should have some lively discussion on, what's it going to take? How must we prepare so that we can get to a place where we can trust the AI ML model? So we'd love to get some thoughts, given that it appears that we think that some gaps still exist.
There's so much. I mean, to Mega's last point, there's so much that has to happen, right? It's just early days. And I think you enumerated many of those things, Mega, that need to happen. There's too many vulnerabilities. There's too much lack of transparency, to your point. A lot of the data is not trustworthy, or the answers. It can also be manipulated. So in the models themselves, there's a lot that has to happen. But in the regulatory space, it's also early days. Regulations are really immature around AI. There's an executive order that the Biden administration put out last year. It's very comprehensive, but it was October of last year. And it's a trickle-down theory. When an executive order happens, the government starts to make steps towards adhering to it, and then it comes out to, the corporate private sphere, or sometimes the corporate private sphere drives it. But as far as having true standards and regulatory control at the US level, we don't have it. The first act that came out was the EU, and it's an interesting act and set of frameworks very specific to use around healthcare and finance, because that's highly sensitive information. So really early days there, and then really early day, maybe not really early days, but the vulnerabilities that exist in the AI models today, to me, don't breed the confidence or trustworthiness, alongside of not having the guidance, the governance, the frameworks, the policies that corporations, enterprises have to start putting in place. So really early days, but I'll stop there because I know that these brilliant women have many more wonderful things to say.
Yeah, I can talk about this one a little bit in regards to, when I go to clients and I talk to some of my clients and friends, a lot of them are saying, yes, we're using AI in the environment, but we don't know what to do from a governance oversight perspective. And that's where the trustworthiness piece comes in, right? And do we know, who's responsible for AI? When the big difference actually with the AI development now is, before, let's say we're doing, software development in the past, you actually had developers, they were getting secure code training to actually do the development of softwares and so on with code. Now what's happening is the model development is actually occurring with R&D teams. So research and development teams are more engaged in that. Data analytics and data scientists are developing these models. They don't have secure code training. There's no, secure code training potentially happening with those folks. And that's a big piece that's actually missing, right? So they're developing these models that may be vulnerable. And, just something to relieve you a little bit, there's actually this thing called the Stanford University Foundational Model Transparency Index. And what that does is that actually, if you go and you look at the index, it'll tell you there's 100 pieces of criteria of transparency indicators that it maps OpenAI and Meta and all of these different developers essentially of these models, Hugging Face and so on. It'll tell you, oh, okay, from a transparency perspective, these models are rating at a 83 out of 100 transparency score and so on. So it actually can start to give us a little bit more comfort around trusting these models. So that's something that, I recommend my clients to go and look at as they're developing these models, and include it as a part of their governance and oversight as well. So, and then not only that, but not everybody has the same values and ethics, right? Not a lot of organizations want to use AI ML, of course, we want to use it to make more money, right? That's the goal, right? A lot of the times. And so there are different reasons for businesses to use these. But at the same time, it's really important to add some sort of, oversight regulation around it, and putting some sort of standardized criteria that, hey, if you're actually going to develop these models, as you're going through these different phases of model development, do this from a security perspective, hit these milestones. Next phase of model development, hit these security milestones. Think about privacy, think about bias. And that will allow us to trust those models a little more, in my opinion.
I just want to add to that. If you think about the development of AI use cases, they're predominantly being driven by the business. And just like with any new technology, when the use case is being driven by the business, security isn't at the table all the time up front. Yeah. That's a major concern around, identifying who's governing the risks around this. Identifying those risks and saying, okay, here's how setting up a framework for how we're going to manage that. And then being able to actually report on that to somebody saying, yeah, we know what these are. The second thing that I think about is that I think I saw data that less than 12% of AI development is being developed in-house. The rest is either being purchased or it's being composed from different pieces. And to me, that opens up a whole new can of worms as it relates to supply chain risks that I think a lot of people aren't thinking about.
Great points, ladies. I'm sorry, Dimple, you want to add?
Yeah, sorry. I was just going to say, I echo Tanya's points, right? I think one of the things that, look, I think part of me also wants to believe that people aren't doing things always for with a bad intent. And some of it is just ignorance. Right. And so we see this repeatedly, is that there are certainly business challenges, whether those are driven by getting to market faster in releasing new solutions or services or whatever an organization may be focused on, or whether it's purely looking at productivity, usability. Security may not be well understood still for many parts of the organization. And so some of the comments Megha was making, they certainly resonate with me, because that's an approach that in my BISO role, exactly what we did, right? In working with our Office for Privacy and Responsible Technology, really looking at overall model. Just because the technology gives you the ability to do something doesn't mean that it's necessarily the right thing to do. And so a lot of it early days centered around defining and providing guidelines to the organization so that anyone who is enthralled and excited about using AI, it's not necessarily to dampen their enthusiasm, but really to give them some level of guidelines. And so that comes with awareness, that comes with defined use cases and open dialogue that is maintained over a period of time, so that as new applications for the technology are identified, people have a place to go to and just ask without any concern about what that may lead to. So that's not only for internal applications, but Tanya was mentioning about so much of the development also being outsourced. And whether that's through staff augmentation, whether it's through agencies, whatever may be the case. So then you have to kind of look at what are the established policies for use of organizational data, which could be confidential, proprietary, all that kind of stuff. So people are more responsible. Then there's the understanding how your third parties will use the data, and from prompts, and what will they claim as their ownership. But then also looking at the risks that get introduced by those third-party service providers and or application developers. So do they understand the risks that they're responsible for managing? So I think it's more complicated than perhaps sometimes when you think about, well, let's go to it and let's start building, let's be better, let's be faster, let's be more economical. I think there are a lot of considerations, and I guess my point comes down to is it all kind of starts with not only defining a governing body and a model and the purpose of it, but maintaining an active dialogue. So as things progress, people have information on where they can go to for direction on applying AI responsibly, and certainly adhering to the very rapidly changing regulatory landscape, as Christina was just mentioning, is the nuances, how regulators interpret it, even what may be said in one AI regulation in one part of the world versus another. It's certainly it's a lot to navigate for organizations with a global footprint.
Yeah, and quite the balancing act. And so just quick follow-up on that. So, clearly we need to navigate and balance regulatory and ethical guidelines and requirements, et cetera. But the bad actors aren't. So how do we balance that, but still have strong enough defenses in order to try to stay ahead? Because that's really, what we're struggling with, right? Is how do you implement the technologies and capabilities quick enough to stay ahead of your adversaries? Any thoughts on that?
Yeah, we're all silent. I think if we had the answer to that, we'd probably be all of us would not be on a podcast. We'd be out sailing our yacht in the middle of the Mediterranean, right? I mean, I think with any technology innovation, the train has left the station. Like, companies are using AI, and we are, in a way, we're playing catch up. But I feel like we do that with any new innovation that comes out, right? The business says, I'm moving forward. It's going to help drive my business. It's going to help drive growth in my business. We're doing this. The business leaders are making the decision, and you guys figure it out afterwards. I think I have not seen within our customer base, not even close to, I would say, 10% of the organizations that we work with are thinking about governance of risks, thinking about compliance ahead of time as they're pushing these AI use cases out in their business. They are thinking about it after. In fact, we have right now an uptick in AI risk assessments within our consulting group for that very reason. They're coming to us after the fact saying, we're doing this, and now we need to try to understand where our risks are and perhaps create a framework around how to manage that.
Yeah, absolutely. We're seeing that as well, Tanya. It's basically what happened with cloud, right? When cloud was a new technology, it was already out the door, and companies were using it, and then security was called in, and hey, we're using cloud, all different types, SaaS, PaaS, IaaS. We don't know how to reel it in. We don't know how to put security guardrails around it. Can you help us? And that's exactly what's happening here as well. And I hear that from my clients a lot. Now, going to Beth's question on, what striking a balance, essentially, right? We're not saying that at least I'm not saying that put so much regulation on this emerging technology that it can't grow, right? Or that it can't evolve and become better and really help augment what a human does, right? But what I'm saying is that yes, of course, the attackers have, just like they have always had, potentially unlimited funding, unlimited, no rules. We can throw the rule book out, and it's perfectly okay. And that's what cybersecurity as an industry has always combated. This is just another emerging technology that we're having to combat. And we're used to that, I feel, as cyber professionals.
Yeah, I would agree with that. I think on a couple of points, certainly when we talk about regulations, look, at some point there are going to be all kinds of dialogue about who's held accountable at the end of the day, and those are tough questions to look at. it is a little bit in terms of the intent and the usability and the creation and the deployment, right? So I think it is a shared responsibility that has to happen in many which ways that I think will get fleshed out over a period of time. But as Tanya said, I don't think we have a choice as cyber practitioners or security practitioners. We've all fought really hard to change the optics and perception of security, from being the office of no or naysayer, or however somebody wanted to frame us. Right now, people do see it as a enablement to the business, and I certainly kind of approach that when one of the roles, Beth, you mentioned for me as a business information security officer, a BISO, I am looking at it from that perspective: is how do I enable my business, but doing so with security principles in mind and balancing the risk. And so with that, I always kind of also fall back on the notion that we've all are very well familiar with in whether we say security by design or security and privacy by design, but nonetheless, really applying the lessons that my esteemed panel here has been highlighting around, whether from the days of adopting cloud, whether that was to test out the productivity and the scalability and the elasticity, to then security was like, oh yeah, we should secure that thing, right? Well, I think I would hope that we were learning and smarter from our past experiences to say, how do we not wait for those aha moments after some big splash incident that hits everyone, but more so start applying the knowledge we have, enhancing our secure by design principles and guidelines, making sure that everyone has role-based education that helps them understand the basic principles and reinforcing those, but then also accounting for the new threats that get introduced with use of AI. And so how do you counter those? How do you proactively plan for those? Including from going back and updating things that we know, your incident response plan, your threat modeling, right? All those type of things. So I think for me, it's a combination of really looking at applying those past experiences to enhancing our existing programs, our guidance, our education, our shared services, whatever an organization really has been relying on. And then a lot of it, it's going to sound a little cheesy, but nonetheless, I believe it. It's this type of conversation. Yes. Because there's not a single time that I have these type of dialogues that I'm not scribbling in the background and saying, okay, this is a great perspective that perhaps I need to go and explore further in my organization. So I encourage people not necessarily to come and listen to us on these panels, but really to engage in communication. Well, listen to us on panels, but hopefully that's just more of a prompt than anything else to facilitate a dialogue that needs to happen and happen more often.
Awesome. Let's have the next one on a yacht, though. I did like that idea.
Definitely on the yacht. Whoever has. Can I jump in for just a minute?
I was thinking as Dimple was talking that, oh my gosh, are we going to get to a point where one of the use cases for AI will be to help us identify how we govern AI?
There you go. Stranger things have happened.
Yeah. And Christina, were you trying to add some commentary there?
Yeah. I got a little hung up on the yacht piece. I'm really excited. There's a few things I want to pull threads on here. One is the train has already left the station. You know, Tanya said that. Horses left the barn, whatever you want to say. The words you used, Beth, arms race, bring up some really like hair raising on my arm thoughts. How far will we go with a real arms race? I mean, we've got cyber war now.
True.
Right? So will there be geopolitical challenges because of AI? And I will venture to say probably, because there are geopolitical ramifications now when it comes to nation state crime or criminal hacks, anything that is cybersecurity adversary related, there are geopolitical ramifications. So I think that's interesting.
No. Appreciate
that. Yeah. I think a lot of it, we've been talking about defense. And look, I kind of look at this as an opportunity. Christina mentioned something about being able to be prepared, right? The one area that I think there's a tremendous amount of opportunity for us is more the, if we were following the NIST framework in Protect, really looking at how do we help reduce some of the dependencies, right? Maybe this is wishful thinking. I don't know. But some of the challenges that we've all struggled with, whether those are qualified skills, whether that is being able to achieve higher degrees of maturity within security programs and processes, to look at how do we apply AI to hopefully automate some of them. And so that, kind of going back to the comment Mega was making about use of cloud, I don't think we're that far off from really looking at being able to be less dependent on people doing and maintaining security hygiene by doing a lot of that through AI and automation. I honestly don't. I mean, we're certainly working on it and kind of ready to experience and co-create with some additional clients there. But it's also about how do we use AI for our own scale, for kind of being the force multiplier in a way to the work that we perhaps haven't been funded to do. So, albeit our adversaries may be better funded, I think we just need to also rethink And this shouldn't be just about use of AI for defense, but also more about how do we improve how we tackle situations, how we automate, how do we change the narrative.
Love that. Perfect. Well, let's end on that because we're coming up on time, and I know that the audience has been active in sending in some questions. So if you don't mind, let's go ahead and move to audience questions. Just a moment. Look here. All right. So audience question. How do we see AI ML in cybersecurity affecting the cybersecurity marketplace, such as large and small solution companies? Do we see this as being a major driver for consolidation? So, Christina, you're probably a good one to answer that.
Yeah, I'll start. I'm sure everyone will have great insights. I am studying this, and there is a lot of activity in startup land. And no surprise, right? Everybody's got a .ai after the name of their company. And I can think of like 5 right off the top of my head. And there are more. And so to someone's point earlier, we've already been building ML and AI into our solutions for a long time. And along the NIST spectrum, we're seeing identify and detect a lot in AI usage, not in protect as much, and that'll be interesting as we start to see protect more. Prevent, we started seeing prevent with, the beginning of EDR, and that wasn't generative AI, but it was ML and AI nonetheless. And so there are a lot of companies that are out there right now that are building tools that we're going to see simplify processes, simplify or hone, take vast amounts of data and hone it into usable human language for alerts and triages and investigation, incident response, but also anomalous behavior. We're going to see a lot better detection of that. So I think there's a lot out there that I'm seeing today. So how does it impact the market? Hugely, like any new technology revolution. Cloud was massive. It changed the whole landscape of where our data centers live. And when I was at IDC, we studied how cloud was just this little thing that was starting and people were so resistant to it. And now everyone's in cloud, multi-cloud, if not, just one cloud. And they're also in hybrid, on-premise, and sometimes multiple clouds. And I think it will see the same massive hockey stick growth in the market. I'm already seeing that growth of cybersecurity companies, but not just cybersecurity AI, but all of the AI that's being used everywhere. So it's a massive hockey stick. And I think it will cause a lot of M&A, and I think those with the best models and the best vetted data and the best transparency and the best policies and they will win faster than those that don't have those things. So I think it's massive for our market. So I don't know, it's job security for folks like us, right? Because we have to figure out how to protect, and educate around the usage of AI. And consult with our clients to help them build things in the AI world. And I think that this is just another iteration of technology that's going to completely have that hockey stick and grow insanely.
Thank you, Christina. Just time for one comment on that before I just want to get a couple more questions in here. Anybody else want to comment on that?
I just wanted to say very quickly, I also think it's going to change our sense of who we are as cyber professionals and what it is our responsibility to protect. So traditionally, as security professionals, we protect the data, we protect the infrastructure, we protect the users. But when you're seeing new things coming out like misinformation campaigns that are using AI, influencer campaigns that are using AI, deep fakes, does that now fall under the realm of the cybersecurity team? And what does that look like as part of the overall protections that we're responsible for? And I think there's going to be some interesting things that are going to happen in that area. How does a company, who is responsible for ensuring that a CEO or C-suites, there's not deep fakes out there that are out there running amok, right? Or that somebody isn't using something to AI in a way that's going to provide misinformation or run a misinformation campaign. I mean, we saw some of that in the last election. So those are some of the things I think about.
Great point. Thank you, Tanya. Can't wait to see that research, Christina, on topic.
You bet. Can't wait to
All
finish
right.
it.
Another audience question here. How do you see AI ML reshaping the threat landscape itself? So, Tanya, you want to take that one, maybe?
I mean, I think this is in a way that's as vast and wide as it's shaping how we're protecting. We know threat actors are actively using AI to launch phishing campaigns at a faster pace, greater variations. We know that they're using it to reshape malware. We know that they're using it across the board in many different ways. So I think absolutely, as much as we have it and we're thinking about it, our adversaries are doing the same.
Thank you, Tanya. Anyone want to add any commentary?
Yeah, I would agree with that. I think it's like I think we were talking about earlier in the conversation is while much of the threats are similar, there are some new threats that that this technology does introduce, whether those are in prompt injection or even attacker interacting with a large language model in a way that can be resource consuming and cause quality of service. So, the good old days of DOS or DDoS, right, in new form. So I think it's many of the old things that will take shape and be represented or in new ways. And so really, even with the models, is everything from data poisoning onwards, the use cases that Tanya was mentioning, that we all worry about in terms of how that gets brought to life. I think same things for security. The one area that I think I'm particularly keen on looking at is sometimes the over reliance on large language model that can lead to misinformation or inappropriate content because of hallucinations. And so going back into our prior conversation around governance, this is an area that I think will warrant more attention. And I suspect regulators will certainly be looking at that as well, and just looking at how that pans out, and organizations with legal issues and reputational damage that accompanies it. So the security threats, Beth, may not be all that different, but the impact and the outcomes, I think, are what we're going to see some variability.
Yeah,
Awesome.
Actually, let me add to that a little bit. I know we're talking about a lot of weaponization of AI, which is absolutely, true. The threats may vary a little bit, but what actually is going to be very different is also the securing those AI ML models in the environment, right? And how do you actually secure the models from data poisoning, inversion of version attacks, and making sure that data that's going through the models remains as is, and also nobody can also manipulate the model itself from the outside. So and also access control to the models. So it has introduced that additional threat in regards to just securing the model itself.
Well, we have actually a really great audience question here as it relates to that. So, with all the discussion around the models, what are the best uses of AI ML models to augment cybersecurity? Which one's the best to use now? Want to finish on that, Mega, since you were...
Absolutely. So I hear this ask from my clients all the time. They're like, these AI ML models and just our organization wants to use an extensive amount of data. and we don't know how to clean it. And we don't know how to obfuscate it, tokenize it, sanitize it, encrypt it. I mean, we don't know how to do it. And the best part about AI ML models is it can actually help with data security and actually cleaning the data. So funny enough, you can use AI ML model to clean the data to use an AI ML models, which is actually a pretty cool way to actually augment cybersecurity. And then not only that, but a second way to do it is network security. So of course, AI ML models can be used for anomaly detection, which we've seen a lot of already, analyzing that network traffic and identifying unusual activity. But really what makes this different when you use AI ML models is these models are much better at pattern detection. They learn from more data. They reduce those false positives, and they can automate anomaly detection and just so much more. So, like I said, data security, network security, just two really good examples of how you can augment cyber using AI.
Thank you. Well, I think we're at about time. So any last comments before we close here? All right. Well, listen, thank you so much. A special thanks to our esteemed panelists. This was very informative and fun. And a special thanks to our audience. There were a number of audience questions, however, that we didn't get to address here, but we will follow up with those answers. I ask that you please stay tuned for our next cybersecurity panel planned for early 2025. And thank you all again.
Thank you.
Thank you.